So shouldn't be anything too surprising here in what we're going to talk about, but there's a lot of moving parts as always. It's been an incredibly difficult year for investors. We recognize that, and we continue to try and be patient and get everybody through this. We're going to start with what's going on with White Hawk Wealth. What are we up to? We'll start there. Got a couple of things to announce. Some of you already know about it, so no big surprises. And then Cam's going to do a little bit of a market update for us. We'll talk about Q3 earnings. We'll talk about interest rates, inflation, all the hot items that everybody's talking about. And then what our outlook is moving into 2023. Can't believe we're already almost there, but I think as investors, we're ready to say good riddance to 2022. And then we'll jump into a couple new things that we're trying out. So we'll do tips. So I'm going to do some tips on year-end ideas that you can utilize to create wealth. Again, shouldn't be anything incredibly mind-blowing, but should be some good information that you can use or share with the people around you, especially as you get around Thanksgiving dinner. I know we all love to talk about money and creating wealth. Kidding. And then the last piece that Cam will cover will be a little bit of education around tax loss harvesting. What the heck is it? Do you need to be a farmer to do it? The answer is no. And then I'm going to start off by letting you know that we are recording this. Our goal is to be able to distribute this to the people that couldn't make it. Of course, it has to go through compliance. So if we see anything too stupid here, we can't edit it out. That will not happen, but we're going to do our best. By golly. But this is being recorded. So if you do have some, we're going to finish off with Q&A. If you have a question for us or anything that pops up while we're talking, the easiest way is probably just to type it into your comment box, and then we'll make sure that we address it at the end. If there's nothing and we're entering into cricket mode, we'll just cut off early like we have in the past, but happy to answer anything you can. I had some questions pop up after the town hall last time and would love to answer those for everybody as we move through these. So for me, I'm pretty excited today. I am, as we tell our kid, I am 2 sleeps away from hopping on a plane to go to the Bahamas for an entire week. We're counting down. 3 to 6 inches of snow tomorrow is definitely going to make us want to leave. We're going to Atlantis. There's a basketball tournament. We're going to have a blast. We're going to do some fishing. So I will not be reachable. So if you need to do any trades or anything and you're on this call, please call. I'll have an email up. Just contact LPL. Otherwise, we'll be back. It won't be too long. And then, of course, Cam is around too. And then we've got Thanksgiving coming up. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We're really grateful for our business and the clients we have. As trying of a year as this has been, I think both our plates are incredibly full as far as work goes. I'm very grateful for you all and for everyone that we work. All right. So the other thing, something that I've been working on that I'm really excited about for us to utilize is we've got this. The name keeps getting butchered, but it's financial planning and wealth coaching is what we're calling it now. But it's essentially a 7-session program, and we've got 3 of them that we're offering. We're going to offer 10 spots starting in January that we're going to divide and conquer on. We've got one for young professionals, which is really like the millennial that's making good money and doesn't know what to do with it and really hasn't learned much about wealth. It's not something that's taught a lot in the schools. It covers everything from what the fees are in our industry, whether that's what we charge or investments charge, all the way through dealing with aging parents. That includes building a financial plan, building a portfolio, and everything in between. We've got one for pre-retirees, so people that are within 5 years of retirement. A lot of the same topics, but we do add in Social Security and Medicare as an entire session. Each session is about 60 to 90 minutes, one-on-one. It's all one-on-one. And then we've got, on the flip side of retirement, we've got new retirees. So within 5 years of retiring, again, very similar. There's an added session in there for gifting, some gifting strategies. But again, still talking about Social Security, Medicare, building out a financial plan, and everything in between. I do have a landing page for people to sign up for that. If you're interested in getting the flyers, and I'll send a link to the landing page. I know some of you on this call already have this info. But if you want to just raise your virtual hand, we'll make an X on there. We'll blast it out. We're going to blast it out to everyone anyway soon. But if you would like to get that today, I can get that out to you. So just raise a virtual hand. We'll get you all the flyers. And then just so you know, as an existing client, if there's a session on one of those things that you want to do, if we haven't taken the time to go through Social Security and Medicare planning with you, and you're coming up on that, hey, we might be in a period where we should elect, just schedule it with us. You have full access to all those, every single session on those. you have full access to those and you're already paying us. So you're not going to pay for that. You're not paying extra out of pocket. You're already a client. So don't sweat that. It's really for people that are not clients yet. And we want to potentially educate them before we decide to work with them. That's that piece. I'm going to hand it over to Cam for some market updates. It's been a whole month since we last spoke and it feels like a lot has happened. So Cam, take it away.
Yeah. Hi guys. So couple things just to touch on, try and bring you up to speed on what the hot button items, if you will, are right now. The big ones still remain corporate earnings, inflation, and what the Fed is doing in regards to all of those things. We did finally get some good news last week. The CPI report came out and it was below expectations for the first time in a very long time. And although it was still up year over year, the rate is decelerating. So we're certainly not seeing deflation, but we're starting to hopefully get into a place of disinflation where the rate of change is decreasing. 7.7 still sounds really high and nobody's excited about that, but it's certainly better than the 9.1 we had earlier in the year. That's good news. Some of the other good to at least like moderately good news, Q3 earnings are about to wrap up. So there's just a handful of companies left to go this week and I think the beginning of next. But at this point, we're about 90+% through earnings. And you're looking at about 70% of companies have beat both on revenue and on earnings expectations. It's you got to take it with a grain of salt because they have intentionally lowered their expectations as the year has gone on. If you will, jumping over a much shorter hurdle at this point. But nonetheless, if you're still clearing the hurdle, that's still at least positive for those companies. Just a couple examples in the last couple of days. Walmart crushed their earnings on both lines yesterday. Home Depot did really well. Everybody thought Target was going to do well, and then today they came out and did not do as well. I believe they beat on revenue, but not on earnings. So it's still very much a mix. Certain companies, certain groups, depending on where they get things, are going to struggle with some of the supply chain issues still, and inventory still seems to be an issue for some companies. But at least across the board, these things are not becoming more pervasive. If anything, they're lessening, which going into the holidays will be very good. Today, retail numbers came out. They were actually higher than expected, which was, I think, a bit of a surprise. We were expecting retail sales to be up, but not up as much as they were, which kind of gets back into this mixed bag of good news is bad news is good news. Sometimes good news is good news. I would say the CPI being light last week was definitely good news is good, but with retail sales still up, that's good news is bad news in some regards if the Fed continues to pursue a quicker rate hiking cycle. After CPI was lower than expected, and the producers index, the PPI, was lower than expected as well. I think it looks like we're probably looking at a 50 basis point hike next month instead of the potential 75. So again, it's good news. These are smaller numbers, lower hikes, mortgage rates go up slower. In fact, today the 10-year bond rate is down to 3.72. If you told me that last year, that sounds really high, but it was almost 4.25 not that long ago. Mortgage rates, I believe, have gone from over 7 to back below 7 now. So we're starting to see things moderate at least a little bit. And then along those lines, the Fed is going to continue to talk very hawkishly, I think, all the way up until the point when they say, okay, we're done. Because at this point, they've gone so far and they've raised rates so much that if they come out and are too dovish too soon, it'll undo everything they've done already. It's not great to hear Jerome Powell get on the mic and start talking about how everything is still terrible and nothing looks good. But at the same time, keep in mind that he's going to have to say that until things actually look good, almost to the point of overcooking it. Some of the other Fed chairs have come out and been a little more, I don't want to say dovish, but a little more moderate at least. So they are aware that what they're doing will take effect and it will take time, which kind of leads into the last piece of this, which is where do we think 2023 is going to go and what is the chance of a soft landing still? Soft landing being either we have a recession that is mild or we don't have a recession. On the one hand, I would say flip a coin because you've got plenty of people still arguing we're in a recession right now. But the biggest silver lining of all of this is the employment data is still very, even as the job openings numbers have come down a little bit, employment has not come up much. We hear about some layoffs in the tech sector. And while they make big news, they make big headlines when you hear that Amazon and Apple are potentially laying off even 10% of people. The reality is the tech sector only makes up about 2% of the entire workforce. So if a small percentage of the 2% are actually losing their jobs, that's not going to make a massive difference in the unemployment rate, which means people still have jobs, people can still pay their mortgages, pay their bills. And at this point, credit card data is people are using them more, but not excessively, certainly not like we've seen historically. So that's all good news. I think that leaves a soft landing still on the table, but at this point, there's still a lot of things that are going to need to come down. Inflation has to come down dramatically closer to that 2% target they would like for them to really slow down on the Fed rate hikes. So there's a lot of unknowns at this point. The news is certainly getting better, but likely the volatility will continue through the end of the year. Seasonally, markets do well this time of year. We've entered the Goldilocks 6 months of the year where markets do well. So that is working in our favor. And having the midterms passed, that was the other thing I was going to mention. Split government, no matter how you feel about the politics, is good for markets because it means not a lot of big things are going to change. And the market doesn't care if Republicans are in charge or Democrats are in charge. They just doesn't want change. That's good news, both seasonally and just historically for markets. Getting past that midterms, we know what to expect for the next 2 years, and that's all good news for markets. So that's the update of what's going on. Certainly happy to dive in deeper on anything if somebody has a specific question, but otherwise I will give it back to JD and he'll go over some tips for the year.
Yeah, and it sounds, as I was listening to Cam, it sounds like inflation is coming down slowly, but inflation is coming down. Earnings are not great, but just fine. Sounds like the Fed is going to slow down a little bit, but they're not done. When I hear these things, and interest rates have come down. So I hear these things and I start to feel a little bit of optimism. And we could sure use a little bit of optimism. I think that the softer the landing, the longer this takes. Just to summarize that, I think that we have to be really patient as investors. And that's, if we want a soft landing, that's going to require us to be really patient. Otherwise, if we want to rip the Band-Aid off this thing, that probably will put us into a recession. So I think the slow play on this is going to work in our favor as long-term investors. We'll see what happens. Never a dull moment. But hey, we'll look forward to some upside here, hopefully in 2023, and we'll see what the rest of the year brings. So typically, this is a good time of year for the market because everything is always the same every year. All right, so I'm going to jump into some really quick tips for the end of the year. There's only so much we can do, right? It's November, December, but there are things we can do. Typically, when we think about strategies for wealth, we always end up at taxes. I don't know how. So let me preface these next two segments by saying that we are not CPAs. We do not offer tax advice, but we can at least help you with some avoidance. Education on avoidance. All right, so number one, and this is for my pre-retirees, it's really for my pre-retirees. Check your 401ks, see how much you put in. Feel free to max those puppies out. Again, we want to buy, right? We want to buy while the markets are down. Even if it goes lower, we're down significantly. Buy. Just keep buying. So check the 401ks, check out, make sure you're maxing. Those numbers are going to jump up next year. So at the start of the year, you also want to go in and check and see what your numbers are like. If you're over 50, you get a catch up. So that's a higher number. I know for 2022, the number is $20,500 that you can defer, and then $6,500 catch up for being over 50. Next year, that's going to be $22,000 and $6,500. So those numbers go up a little bit. And then you can also, if you have earned income, you can also shell a little bit of money into a traditional IRA. We've also got some other IRAs set up. Those aren't as time sensitive. For most of those, you've got until you file. But with the 401k, we want to get those in before the end of the year. So that's a big one. If you are a business owner, you still have time to set up an owner K.
December 9th.
We're right at the end now.
Yeah, it has to be in by December 9th for any new 401ks.
Yep. So like a solo 401k, but you have until you file to contribute to those. All right. If you're going to gift money to another person, so we'll start with people. You can do $16,000 per person. So if you and your spouse want to contribute, that's $32,000 that you could give to one person. Typically, we think of children or grandchildren for this year. Get those out before the end of the year. Get a nice little gift, a free gift without paying taxes on that. That's great. If you want to donate, so donations, this is a great time of the year to give. There's plenty of people in need. I know me and my wife and son sat down the other night and bought a bunch of gifts for precious child families. You can do that now. If you had a large taxable event this year, we've had some clients that have had those, and you want to donate before the end of the year, but don't know where you want that money to go, or if you know someone that has a circumstance like this, we have something called donor advised funds that we can utilize where you can put the money in and determine where it goes later, but get the write-off this year. So that's a strategy that you can use. Keep that in mind as you're talking to people here through the end of the year. They want to get those set up and get that money in. We can do it fairly quickly, but it takes a couple weeks. But get the donations in. Harvesting losses. So for you, I'm looking at the call here. I'm pretty sure we've taken care of this for all you guys. But again, as you're having conversations, these are things that are good to know. We have pretty much harvested every loss that we can without the market going down further. And again, Cam's going to talk about what that means, but it's something you can utilize to lock in losses, especially if you've had a gain. Again, it's the same as the donor advised fund. If you had an event this year where you had a capital gain, whether that's selling a house, a rental property, selling something else that had a capital gain on it, you could potentially offset that. We've done the work on our end to harvest as much losses as we can, but that's a great year-end strategy. And again, consult with your CPA on all this stuff. So anything that you're going to do, talk to your CPA first, talk to your accountant, make sure that you're okay, and then you can talk to us and do what you need to do. So I'm going to pass it over to Cam. That's a great sage way for Cam to tell us what the heck tax loss harvesting is. His family's from Iowa. They're farmers. I'm sure he totally understands this because of his background.
Yeah, a lot of farming references here. Tax loss harvesting has nothing to do with bringing in the oats. It is simply selling something that is down in a non-retirement account. So that's a big differentiating factor. If you have an IRA, a 401k, you can sell things in there, rebuy things, reinvest. There's no tax implications. So because there is no consequences to it, there's also no advantage to it. But in a non-retirement account, so any just joint account, B account, individual account, if there is something that is down, we can sell while it is down and reinvest the money into a similar asset. So if we're talking about large cap stocks, we can sell one large cap fund and buy another large cap fund. And as long as there's enough difference between the two to avoid a wash sale, then we can do that. Now, that means you maintain your investment, and whenever the market begins to reverse course and head up higher, you'll still get rewarded for holding the investment long term. But in the meantime, it's the one good piece of thing we can do while markets are down. So for example, you have a $100,000 investment account. Right now, the account is worth $75,000. If we go in and we sell all of the things that are down for that $25,000, reinvest them in similar asset class or similar investment vehicles. So you maintain your allocation the way it was, but similar investments, you now have a $25,000 capital loss. You can use that in a few different ways. Every year you can take $3,000 off of your ordinary income and use capital loss against that. So if you have $25,000 for the next 8+ years, we can say every year we want to take $3,000 off your ordinary income and mark off part of that capital loss. The other thing you can do is if you sell a house or you sell a business or you sell a van, a large purchase, or excuse me, a large asset that results in a capital gain, you can use the capital loss from your stock portfolio to offset some of that gain. The third way would just be if we have capital gains either from distributions from mutual funds, which there aren't going to be very many of this year. There's only a handful of funds that we've heard are going to have distributions at all. But the ones that do, we'll be able to offset with losses in that account already. And then say next year, if we see a good year, market rips up, we have big gains at the end of the year that we want to then sell or reposition for some reason, we can use this year's capital loss to offset next year's capital gain. So capital losses can be carried forward forever. And you can slowly figure out, again, with your CPA, what makes the most sense as far as offsetting ordinary income, other capital gains from asset sales, or on our end from future capital gains in the stock market. But that's what, in a nutshell, tax loss harvesting is and how it works. And like JD said, for the most part, we've already established that with all of the taxable accounts. So again, barring a major market swing, it's unlikely that we will have much left that we can do on that front. But if we do, we will, and we'll certainly keep you apprised there. But yeah, that's the basics of tax loss harvesting. There's no silos, no tractors, just dollar signs.
Dang it. I learned something today. And actually, one important piece there is the avoiding washing piece. We're pretty dang good about it. You just can't buy the exact same investment. If you're in a mutual fund, all mutual funds are pretty dang different. So it's pretty easy for us to go in and lock in losses. One time this has come up a lot for me, and again, I'm trying to hit on conversation pieces here. and you could probably say the same thing in Colorado, which most of you are in. We are constantly talking to people that either have sold a house or are going to sell a house, and that it includes their primary, and they have made so much profit on that house that they actually are outside of the exclusion of 500,000 for a couple, 250,000 for a single, that they're having capital gains on their primary residence, which was unheard of. But now, because our real estate has taken off so dramatically, but people don't want to talk about losses in their portfolios. But really, there's this huge potential to save people a ton of money. So if you're hearing these types of things, people selling their house and having to pay capital gains on their properties, let the light bulb go off and get them in touch with us. And especially if you can do it before while the market's still down, there's a potential for us to save them some money, especially if if they already sold their house this year, and we got to get on the ball. But if they're selling their house next year, or it's on the market now and it might not sell this year, now's the time to take advantage, because we can carry forward the losses to when they actually sell. That's a really hot topic item for us, is tax loss harvesting. And a lot of advisors aren't talking about it because that means we have to talk about losses. But it's really important. All right, Q&A. I just realized that I don't think there's anywhere to actually type in anything. I was trying to look for a place where you can type. So if you have a question for us, if you wouldn't mind just doing you can click on the reactions and just do like a raise hand, or I don't know what all the options are. Do some sort of emoji so we can see it. And then we'll just have you unmute and ask us a question. And otherwise, we'll pretty much just wrap up here, call it a day at this point. Anyway, all right, I don't see any questions. We're going to wrap it up. We will do another one of these next month. We'll hit it before the Christmas holidays, all the big holidays there at the end of the year. We'll do it before that. Otherwise, have a great Thanksgiving. If you're traveling, have safe travels, be safe. And again, thank you for joining us today. It's really privileged to have you on the call. We appreciate getting to do this, and we'll keep doing it. And thank you. So
Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
It was a recorded sign off.